I just got blocked by my local One Nation idiot. If you live in the Coomera electorate, which is from Yadala to Coomera, this one is for you. I didn't want to do this, Nick, but you've given me no choice. You blocked me after I fact-checked you in your Facebook comments, which I find damn ironic, considering how often you talk about freedom of speech. Now, I need to give the members of my community the right to an informed vote this state election.
Don't make this a voting mistake.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, your government has just signed a new pact with the UN, and this one's called Pact for the Future. And it is a pact for the future, just not your future. For example, did you enjoy seeing this Islamic monument in the streets of Sydney recently?
Bro is so hateful that he can't even appreciate the beauty of the Kaaba.
Well, prepare to see a whole lot more of it, because Action 6E of this agreement stipulates...
Okay, before we let Nick Muir explain what he thinks 6E of this pact means, let's just read it for ourselves. It says that 6E aims to maximize the positive contribution of migrants to the sustainable development of origin, transit, destination, and host countries, and strengthen international partnerships and global cooperation for safe, orderly, and regular migration to comprehensively address the drivers of irregular migration and ensure the safety, dignity, and human rights of all migrants, regardless of their migration status.
6E of this agreement stipulates that instead of promoting the idea that migrants should respect the dignity of their host nation's culture, we must respect the dignity of migrants. Action 6E also asserts that we must strengthen global cooperation for regular migration.
Alright, that's just not what it says.
Just in case you weren't okay with the fact that our government has invited another 770,000 new arrivals to our shores in just the past year alone.
I love when Nick brings up statistics. Firstly, we've got 770,000 nationally in the past year. I don't know why you're talking about national figures instead of state, then saying we've added 1 million people over the past 2 years, then 740,000 in 2024 alone. Is that Queensland or nationally? Seems like a pretty convenient thing not to clarify. And finally, Nick is telling us that Queensland's population grew 134,000 in 12 months. But let's look at this figure of 134,000 people. We don't have the figures for 2024, but the numbers have actually gone down by about 4,000. So Queensland population growth is actually decreasing, although there are 2 months left in the year, so we'll see. But according to 2023 figures, 22,000 were babies being born, 32,000 were other Australians moving from other states, and so only 84,000 is the real number of overseas immigrants coming to Queensland, which seems a lot different to 770,000 or 1 million. But maybe Nick is talking about stopping interstate immigrants too? Keeping Queensland for Queenslanders. Oh no, this isn't about Queenslanders, this is about Australians? I think Nick gives it all away here, because everyone knows that immigration has net positives for host countries. Even Nick understands this. You can see because of how he speaks about previous waves of immigration, maybe if there was some policy, I don't know, from half a century ago, then he could get on board with immigration.
This next one's a silent winner for me, because Action 6A pledges Australia to secure an ambitious outcome at the Second World Summit for Social Development in 2025.
Okay, that's just... It literally just means that we are going to try.
And in case you were wondering, this Second World Summit is concerned primarily with, you guessed it, equity, inclusion and social justice. And by now we all know that these words are simply globalist.
Globalist? Oh.
Doublespeak.
Doublespeak? $5. Nick Muir has never read 1984.
For discrimination against the Anglo inhabitants of Western nations.
Discrimination against Anglo inhabitants of Western countries. Does Nick Muir think that this
Islamic monument
is discrimination against the Anglo inhabitants of Western nations? Now, in today's society, it's not appropriate to be a mask-off Nazi. You can't just go around saying Jews run the world. So they're often speaking a form of code, but are secretly signaling to other Nazis who can understand their true message. These are known as dog whistles. A common dog whistle is using the word globalist as a substitution for Jew. But you don't have to take my word for it, because right here, in his own comments, he admits it. Where were we? Discrimination of Anglo inhabitants in Western countries. Oh, yeah.
And more severe legal consequences for thought and speech crimes. Can't wait to see what Australian legislation brings in 2026.
Whoa, slow down, cowboy. How many bills was that? Okay, so we've got the Respect at Work and Other Matters Amendment Bill 2024. Oh, and that's the same bill? And so is that. Is this just one bill? Okay. We'll get into this Respect at Work and Other Matters Amendment bill later, because Nick's double speak on this one is, wow.
As a nation, it is time to finally stand up and do away with the unelected bureaucratic NGOs such as the UN, the WEF and the WHO that believe mistakenly that they have the right to interfere with our lives. At One Nation, we will always advocate for your basic human freedoms.
Right. That's why you're calling to beef up police budgets and powers, aka restrict our rights and freedoms. Even though the cops are telling us that crime and youth crime is down. This fucking letter, man. Let's debunk every single point on this letter. Stricter sentencing guidelines for magistrates must be implemented. Why? Crime is down. I will advocate for judicial accountability when serious offenders reoffend while on bail. Okay, so threatening judges to give stricter sentencing. Again, why are you focusing on this so much while crime is down? High capacity detention facilities must be built. Why? Crime is down without the creature comforts and amenities that our current facilities include. Creature comforts like solitary confinement, internationally recognized as a form of torture? I will advocate for restitution to be made by parents to victims of crime should parental neglect be found to be a determining factor in the crime. Sure, whatever. I don't care about that one. Once our community is secure, I will work to expand rehabilitative programs such as the Hard Yucca program, which has shown great success up north throughout the state. Evidence, please? What's amazing is they did a study on the Hard Yucca program, proving just how shit it is. Comparing 3 models of youth boot camps, traditional military-style boot camps, which was the Hard Yucca program, showed to have the worst results, while the other 2 models showed a decreased rate in rearrest and recidivism. The evidence suggests that traditional military-style youth boot camps are ineffective and potentially encourage antisocial behaviour. Next. If elected, I'll introduce the castle debate into Queensland Parliament once again. So if you don't know what the castle debate is, it's that stupid shit from America where you can kill anyone for just coming onto your property. There is no justification for this when we already have the right to defend ourselves and use lethal force if necessary. This is the absolute psychotic shit Nick wants to bring here. Net zero immigration. You're running for state government, Nick. Until our housing supply has recovered. Most people hear housing supply and think houses, when housing supply means a willingness to sell or rent at a certain price. Physically, we have 1 million empty homes in Australia. This is an orchestrated crisis. Regulation has made housing the best return on investment decision for those in Australia, thanks to regulation like negative gearing. Housing has become a speculative investment, but Nick isn't going to talk about that. He's going to brag about being on Sky News?
All of Australia's complete excess cash, every dollar we have, is all just funneling into housing. Now, why wouldn't the corporate media tell me about this? I've been watching the news, they never mention this. Well, it might have something to do with this.
Realestate.com.au is part of the REA Group and is majority owned by Rupert Murdoch's News Corp. At the top, realestate.com.au had 42 million visitors. Second place is Domain, which is owned by Nine Entertainment. Property.com.au, which is owned by REA. Flatmates.com.au, which is also REA, and realcommercial.com.au, which is REA. Allhomes.com.au, which is owned by Nine.
So, hang on, almost everybody is getting absolutely shafted by these record high home prices, and Australia's entire economy is shot to hell because of these high Australian home prices. But it looks like there is one group of people that absolutely loves these record high home prices. And that would be the corporate media that make a crap ton of money from having the highest home prices as possible. Because every time you use their website to buy and sell houses, they make a lot of money. So, no surprises there why they're not telling us just how bad Australia's economy is and what we might need to do to fix it.
Next. Ban foreign ownership of Australian property. Really odd coming from the party that's also consistently voting to just give away our resources and minerals. Our property. One Nation votes to give it away for free. I will seek to streamline and simplify land releases and building approvals to increase housing supply. Those are some really nice words, Nick. If you'd like to tell us on how you plan to do that, we're all ears. I will continue to advocate for net zero immigration until our roads have recovered. We've brought in 740,000 new residents in 2024 year alone. This is by far the predominant reason that our commute times have grown insufferable. 740,000? Nick, can I please remind you, you are not running for the national elections. You are running for the Queensland state elections. Stop using these irrelevant numbers. I will give our Coomera Connector project every tailwind possible until complete, such as performance-based contracts, streamlining of approval processes, and supplier diversification. Completion of this project will up to 60,000 cars off our over-congested M1 every day and give us back valuable time with our families. Alright, let's break down these big words. So, performance-based contracts. You pretty much just mean normal fucking contracts. Streamlining of approval processes. Another great use of buzzwords, but can we hear some details? Or a plan? Anything would be better than this, Nick. Supplier diversification. I'm sorry, but how the fuck is that going to help build the highway? You know what would take a fuck ton of cars off the road? Robust public transport infrastructure. I have not heard you mention public transport once. Actually, that's a lie. You came out to shit on 50-cent fares. Anyway, every single person in the electorate from Yadala to Coomera will tell you how shocking the public transport is here.
Well, if you weren't aware, ladies and gentlemen, Australia's Economic Complexity Index ranking, which is a great measure of how robust and resilient our economy is, has sunk like a stone from 60 to 93 over the past 20 years. We are now outranked by such renowned industrial powerhouses as Kazakhstan, Uganda, and Kenya. We used to be a proud manufacturing nation. We built lawnmowers, cars, and even tanks right here in Australia. Now we sell rocks to China.
We don't sell rocks to China. We give them to China for free. And your party votes for it.
And inflate our housing policy through immigration.
And as I've discussed, housing is fucked due to years of government mismanagement, and you don't plan on fixing any of it.
It's embarrassing, but the question is, how do we fix this?
Put royalties on our resources. Regulate the housing market.
Well, I've begun drafting a bill called the Innovate, Manufacture, Protect, a Pathway Back to Economic Complexity Bill. And it's my plan to turn Queensland into the manufacturing capital of Australia, take Australia back up the Economic Complexity Index, and bring manufacturing back to Australian soil. It's based around three primary tenets. First, we incentivise innovation through tax breaks, R&D tax credits, and grants for products that solve issues in a novel and more efficient fashion than previously able.
Novel and more efficient way. Is this guy 12 years old? How are you going to define how novel something is? Are we going to create a national novelty rating?
Second, we bring manufacturing back to Australian soil by offering grants, tax breaks, and whatever other incentives necessary in order to make it attractive for businesses to manufacture in Australia again. We'll
You just said the same thing twice.
offer increased incentives to businesses that utilise Australian supply chains, as the knock-on effect that local supply chain utilisation would have on jobs and GDP would be tremendous.
Like tax write-offs? Again, no details. Words, words, words from Nick Muir.
Third, we protect our innovators from international IP theft by establishing procurement policies that prioritise businesses that respect Australian IP. We may also work closely with the federal government to place punitive tariffs on any country found to be consistently in breach of the copyrights of Australian innovative products. This will protect Australian innovators and manufacturers from having their businesses wiped out by cheap international knockoffs infiltrating the local market.
Liar? If China starts stealing Australian IP, you're going to put tariffs on China? This may be the worst lie I've ever heard.
Remember this piece of work from COVID? Well, she's back from the swamp with another particularly draconian piece of legislation that you need to know about. This is the Respect at Work and Other Matters Amendment Bill 2024, which, believe it or not, clears a legal pathway for you to serve prison time if you say something on social media that offends this guy.
This guy wants to start calling people snowflakes? This guy?
For discrimination against the Anglo inhabitants of Western nations.
Because he has to see this Islamic monument.
I want you to imagine the following. Let's say you use Facebook to speak out against transgender indoctrination in schools.
Transgender indoctrination. Someone has been watching way too much American politics. I'm pretty sure no one in this country has ever talked about this.
Under Section 124B, a social media post qualifies as a public act.
A social media post is a public act.
A reasonable person of the transgender community then finds this statement offensive. Since Section 124D makes it illegal to incite ridicule or contempt based on gender identity, authorities can then charge you under Section 52A of the Criminal Code, which was conveniently amended by this bill to cover serious vilification of gender identity, and these charges can then very realistically lead to prison time.
Nick cuts out some pretty crucial information here. I wonder why. For example, this entire part that he cropped out of his picture, conveniently. Subsection 1 does not make unlawful a public act done reasonably and in good faith for academic, artistic, scientific, or research purposes, or for other purposes in the public interest, including public discussion or debate about and expositions of any act or matter. So that pretty much disproves that entire thing.
Well, it's already happening in the UK, and unfortunately it looks like Australia may be next.
So Nick is talking about people who were arrested for inciting violence. You know, the recent race riots that just happened in the UK. Also stemming from racist misinformation and xenophobic fear-mongering. Sounds all too familiar. This is the last thing I wanted to talk about. So people have been stealing Nick's signs. Shout out to the community for that. He's been, well, crying about it on Facebook. Here he is calling it election interference under Section 183 of the Electoral Act 1992. So I checked. And Section 183 is the how to vote cards section. Okay. So I kept reading, and I assumed this is what he's talking about. Well, alright, Section 179. But as I read the Act, I saw Section 185 about misleading voters. This is how Nick describes rental cap increases. They'll cap rent increases to every 12 months, meaning that instead of your rent being raised 7.5% every 6 months, it'll be raised 15 every 12. Let's just listen to the Greens explain it themselves.
The majority of Queenslanders support a 1% cap on annual rent increases. This means that if you're paying $700 a week for rent, rents could only go up by $7.
But I think that this perfectly encapsulates the issues that I've unpacked in this video. Regardless of intentions, One Nation is misleading the public and voters, either because they're bald-faced liars or they're just that stupid. Either way, all this shows is at best a complete lack of competence, and at worst, a party deeply committed to deceiving and screwing over everyday people.
Authorised by fucking no one. It's just someone has to fact check this misinformation.